Hey friends, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to a story time on all the weirdness that happened while we were in Paris as it relates to trying to find items and things like that, and mostly how I almost didn't get to bring home the bag that you saw me unbox recently. It was quite a story. It's something I don't want to go through that again. It was a little crazy, I'll be honest. Hopefully I can remember the details of it now because I'm filming this, I don't know, this is the beginning of October. So, anyway, that was over a month and a half ago. So let's kind of rewind in on the trip to the Vendôme VIP appointment. And please do not misunderstand me. They were very, very kind, and they, really tried to get items that we had asked them to. I certainly understand that there were some items where we were asking maybe like the day before our appointment, and I totally get that they were not able to bring those particular items in. Because if they didn't have them at their location, they obviously could have, and I'm sure they did, bring pieces in from, other boutiques across Paris or whatever. My understanding was that if it was in Europe, basically, they would be able to source it. So there were many items that as we were going through the appointment, we would ask and they would say they didn't have it. There were even times where we had maybe screenshots on our phones of things with item numbers, and they would say, oh no, they don't have that item. And yet when we were meandering the store, the item was sitting right there. So I don't really, maybe Louis Vuitton needs to update its stock, its inventory system. Because if you have something sitting on the floor and yet in your little phone inventory thing, it's telling you that it's not available and, it's not within the store, something's amiss there. So perhaps their inventory logistics team should have some discussions and maybe try to update their system. Because that seemed to be the resounding theme throughout the whole trip, right? Was we don't have it. It's nowhere in Paris. We can order it, but it'll be a month, whatever it is. And yet we were still seeing things. Sunglasses, for example, we saw also at the gift shop part of the Dream Cafe right before we went to Vendôme. Let me make sure that I put this in here. When Amelia asked for those sunglasses, it is entirely possible that when she looked, there weren't any to be found, but maybe then Champs-Elysees and the Dream Cafe store and whatever then got stock later that day. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. It just, like I said, it happened so many times that it just seems odd that it could happen all those times. So as I mentioned in our VIP appointment vlog, and maybe the unboxing, I don't even remember now, I mentioned that Amelia had shown me a pair of jeans. So the patch jeans that I tried on in the slim straight also apparently come in that wide leg version. I did not see that. It was not a pair, obviously, that 57th Street had, or if they did, they probably didn't have it in my size, so therefore my sales associate didn't bring it to me to try. So I had no idea that those jeans existed. But I had asked for the monogram jeans, and I had asked for slim straight ones. She did have the slim straight ones. They did not have the monogram ones. Now I can tell you that those monogram jeans in a size 34, they were at Champs-Elysees, they were at Saint-Martin. I didn't check any other stores. Oh, I'm pretty sure they had it also at the airport when I got there. Like, there were lots of stores that seemed to have them. So it seemed, again, a little odd to me. And that was not a pair, by the way, that I had asked for, like a last minute ask. It was something that I had put on my wish list like a month before maybe not a month, probably at least 2 weeks, because I think I tried on that stuff at 57th Street about 2 to 3 weeks before we were in Paris. When I asked them about those jeans that Amelia had showed me, she said, oh no, they're nowhere to be found. Like, I don't remember if it was nowhere in Paris, if it was nowhere in France. And, to be, again, fair and honest, that was a last minute ask, right? That was me at the appointment saying, hey, do you have these jeans? And I didn't get an answer like, we don't have them, but X, Y, and Z have them. The answer I got was, no, they are not available. So, as I mentioned, Amelia had been to Paris, I mean, she's been there many times, but one of the times she was there, she connected with a client advisor at the Samaritan Louis Vuitton. I think, it was because they didn't have any of the aubergine bags. They didn't have the Speedy trunk, nor did they have the side trunk. And so she's like, do you want me to see if, I've got this client advisor at Samaritan. Do you want me to see if she has it? So I was like, sure, that would be great. So the next day this is now Wednesday, Amelia's leaving. She goes to the airport. She was flying out of whatever terminal she was flying out of. And she went into the Louis Vuitton store and saw the aubergine Speedy trunk bag. That was what they said they could order, but I think it would be like 3 weeks is what I think she said. But lo and behold, it was sitting right on the shelf at the airport location. So immediately, Amelia voice messages me and have your bag that you've been looking for here. Because at that point, I was then thinking, okay, I'm going to go for the side trunk, which obviously I ended up getting, so that's fine. But I was really hoping they had the aubergine side trunk so I could look at it. But I wanted to see the Speedy trunk again too, because it had been a few weeks. I kind of didn't remember what it looked like, what it felt like, that kind of thing. And so I'm communicating back and forth with Amelia, and I wasn't flying out of the same terminal as Amelia. And so the client advisor that she was talking to there confirmed with a client advisor at the terminal that I was going to be flying out of the next day that they had the aubergine Speedy trunk and that they would hold it for me until I got there tomorrow. Well, then she asked, oh, well, I don't suppose you have these jeans, do you? And he's like, no, we don't have those. Not in that size. But he's looking in his little inventory thing, right? He said, but I can see that Samaritan has them. But apparently Vendôme couldn't see that Samaritan had them. Again, maybe this is Wednesday. Our appointment was on Tuesday. It could be that Samaritan received them later in that afternoon or in the morning on Wednesday. It's very possible. It's possible. So Amelia goes, whatever. I go to Samaritan. They've got the monogram ones to try on. They've got the patchwork ones to try on. They did not have any of the aubergine bags. So now it's Thursday and it's my time to go to the airport. And we're supposed to be there like 3 hours or so early. I decided I would go 3 hours and 45 minutes to 4 hours or so in advance. So I would have plenty of time to go to Louis Vuitton, look at what I wanted to look at. So they were holding the Vibe side trunk for me, and they were holding the Speedy trunk in aubergine for me. I just wanted to give myself plenty of time so I didn't feel rushed, whatever, to get through customs and all the things. So, as I think briefly mentioned in one of my videos, the terminal that I was flying out of, because I was flying Air France, it's like got its main part of the terminal, which to me is generally where the luxury stores are. But here in Paris at CDG, at least for Air France, there are different gate areas. So there was an L gate area, there was an M gate area, a K, an L, and M. Maybe there was an N too. I don't know. I was flying out of L. I'm trying to figure out where the Louis Vuitton is, right? I'm like looking it up on the airport map, trying to figure it out, see where I need to go, right? When I get through security or whatever. Because you have to go through security before you can buy things, duty free. That they reduce it by the 12%. So I knew I had to get through security. And when I finally found it, I think I just Googled it actually. And it turned out that the Louis Vuitton is within the K gates. The gates actually are separated by like little train things, like trams that go, from one, usually they're between terminals, but here they were between different sets of gates at the same terminal. Because, obviously Air France, it's Paris, it's obviously a big hub for them. And I had no idea at that point that they weren't all connected. Anyway, I didn't figure out until I think I was on the tram that the Louis Vuitton was actually at the K gates. So, and when I walked to go get to the tram, I walked past the security on my way to the tram. I passed those 4K. So I'm on the train. I get off at my stop at the L gates, and there was an official looking person standing there. And I asked him, I said, oh, hey, I'm trying to go to Louis Vuitton, but it's in K gates, can I get there from here? He said, no, you need to take the train back in order to get there. Okay, fine. Again, plenty of time, no big deal. So I get back on the train now, and I go back to where the K gates are and the main part of the terminal. Now you have to remember I'm, wheeling my carry-on suitcase plus my personal item, whatever. Not that that's a big deal, but not just like fancy free and walking through the airport with just like my handbag or something, right? I'm still having to like schlep this on the train, off the train, up the escalators, down the escalators. Anyway, so I take the train back. I go back up the escalator. I go over to the K gates where there was some official guy, and they're checking your tickets, whatever, your boarding passes. And so I show him mine, and he's like, well, you are flying out of an L gate. You need to go to the L gates. I said, oh no, I understand that. I said, but I'm going to Louis Vuitton, and that's over here in K. And they told me I needed to come back to come through. He's like, you can't come in here. You're not flying out of a K gate. He's like, you need to go back, go through security, and then come back here. So he made it sound like somehow the L and the K gates were connected somewhere. There weren't a lot of details, but he did tell me I needed to go through security and then I would be able to get there, whatever. So now I get back on the train. I go back over to L. Now you do also have to remember that it was very hot. In fact, I believe that day, I want to say it was like 95 degrees or something in Paris. They're not great about air conditioning, and those tram things were not air conditioned. So now I'm back on the train for the third time, going back to L. So I get through security, and I say to a guy who's past security, one of their, like I said, TSA, I don't know what they call them in France, but anyway, and said, I'm trying to get to Louis Vuitton, which is in the K gates. The guy at the K gates told me I needed to come through security, and then I said, but can you tell me where I need to go? He's like, well, yeah, you need to go down there and you need to exit and go back to K. And I said, I'm sorry, I need to exit? I said, so does that mean I have to go through security again? He's like, yeah. I'm like, at this point, I'm getting very frustrated. I realized English is not their first language. I don't speak any French. So I felt like we were communicating though. So anyway, so I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm just following directions at this point, right? So now I'm about to exit. Okay, I'm walking down this kind of hallway, very like a little hallway where there's like an exit. Those like, you go past here, you do not go past go, do not collect $200, whatever. And a flight attendant happens to walk out because I think there was like a lounge, an employee lounge or whatever next to it there. And she comes out and she can tell that I obviously look very confused and also that I'm going towards the exit, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And she's like, can I help you with something? And so I explained to her, I said, I have an appointment at Louis Vuitton and it's in the K gates. And I was told to go through security and then I'd be able to get there. And then the guy over there told me that no, I had to exit, go out of security and take the train or whatever. And she's like, oh, follow me. Yay. Somebody who is willing to lead me to pasture, whatever. Anyway, so she starts walking. And by the way, when I get through security, there's Hermes, there was Dior, I think there was a Chanel, but there's no Louis Vuitton apparently in this one. So anyway, it's in K. So she starts walking with me a little bit. And up ahead, I can see a large duty-free store. And I mean, it's very, very large. And it's sort of like at the end of this hallway. So she said, just go through there and keep walking and you'll find it. Okay, fine. So once again, I am schlepping this suitcase and my personal item, anyway, in my handbag, whatever. And I'm going through and I'm walking through this very large duty-free store, which, has makeup and booze and, whatever else they sell in duty-free stores. And I'm walking through and I get then to exit the duty-free shop and I'm getting to gates. But they're not K gates, they're more L gates. And they're L gates that are going up in numbers. Like they're not getting smaller. I don't know. In my mind, I'm thinking like if they were getting smaller, then maybe after that, then it would bridge to K. I don't know. I probably walked through, I don't know, 2/3, probably 3/4 of that part of this set of gates. And I'm like, okay, this is clearly not where I am supposed to go. Now, in the meantime, during all of this, Claire and Deb, who were still there, and I think and Victoria, you're messaging me going, did you get the bag? Did you see it? Like, what happened? And I'm like, you guys, I can't even get there to get the bag. They were like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And I'm like, I know, I don't understand what's going on. So I go back through, I go back. So like I said, so far I've taken the train 3 times, right? Once over to L, back to K, back to L. I guess I'm just going to go out, which is what the guy told me to do. So I go back out, I go up the escalator, I wait for a train, and by now it's been a good, this whole thing has taken me a good probably 45 minutes right now already. And now I'm thinking, okay, I have to be at my gate, like the clock is ticking in my head. So I get back on the train, I go back over to K. So now I've been on the train 4 times. And so I walk up to a woman who's not at the K gates yet. She wasn't at the security thing. She was kind of like before. She looked like she was sort of a person who was answering questions. So I said to her, hi, I have an appointment at Louis Vuitton. I have an L boarding pass, but Louis Vuitton is in K. I need to get through security so I can go to Louis Vuitton over there. And she basically, again, her English was not great. She's like, well, you need to go over there, meaning back to the security for K. And I'm thinking, this is not going to work. I had said to myself at this point that if I got rejected again, then this bag, then like these things that I wanted to look at they weren't for me. Like, obviously this is the universe telling me, Lisa, you are not meant to have these items. And anyway, but there was also me thinking, one, I could have bought it, vibe bag that I did end up getting. I could have bought at a number of Louis Vuittons while I was in Paris. So anyway, it was bothering me I want to buy a bag. I want to bring a bag home. Don't get me wrong. I loved all of the ready to wear that I bought and brought home, but I really wanted to get a bag. And since I couldn't get the P9, it's like, gosh darn it, I want a bag. So she says, you need to go there. Now, thankfully, the guy that rejected me the first time must have been on break. So then there was another guy there. And I don't know if I just looked sad and rejected or whatever, like a lost puppy. I said, hi, I have a problem and I really hope that you can help me. I have an appointment at Louis Vuitton. And at this point, by the way, where I was, I could see that actually Louis Vuitton was literally, as soon as you got through security, Louis Vuitton was right there. It's sort of like how it was in the L gates where you got through security and Hermes was like dead ahead, 12 o'clock in front of you. So I had not seen where Louis Vuitton was. So for all I knew, it could have been, halfway down the K gates or something. But no, it was right there. So I was like, I'm just trying to get there. I said, I have an appointment. And I said, I'm flying out of the L gates, but it's in the K gates. And I said, can you please help me get through security so that I can go to my appointment? And he's like, follow me. I was like, oh my gosh, you're taking pity on me. Now, I thought that he was going to sort of like walk me through security. So like I didn't necessarily have to go through security. And I think I may have even said to him, like, look, I was told to go back and then I could have come through. And then they said I couldn't go through and I needed to exit and come back. I said, I've done this like 4 times. Anyway, so he takes me over to security and he says, just go in that line over there. And I'm thinking, okay. Because when I had gone through security at L, they checked my boarding pass again. Like, not only did they check it before I even got to go in line, the person at the belt, like, when you put your stuff on the conveyor belt thing to push it through or whatever, that person was also checking boarding passes. They were checking boarding passes everywhere. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hand this woman my boarding pass and she's going to see it says L and not K. She's going to turn me down. But she didn't ask. I don't know if I was in some special line or something. I have no idea. But anyway, I said, I'm like, do you need more? She's like, no, you can just put your boarding pass in the thing or whatever. I was like, thank you. So I finally got through security at K and went into Louis Vuitton. There's another thing. So when Amelia connected me with the client advisor at the terminal that she was flying out of, he made the arrangements with the client advisor at the Air France terminal. And I asked him for her contact information, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I've taken care of everything. They know, what they're holding everything. You're cool." So now this stuff is happening, and I'm late for my appointment. And so then I'm doing all this runaround by everything, and I'm messaging him again and saying, "Hey, can you help me? You don't have the client advisor's name or contact," or I had her name, but I said, "I don't have her contact information, so I can't let her know that I may not make this appointment because they're not letting me through." Well, obviously it was his day off. So he never got back to me at all. I never heard from him. But again, frustration because I couldn't communicate with the CA in the K gates in order to tell her that, one, I'm running late, and two, I'm really, really trying, but I can't get to you. But obviously it all worked out. So I got through, tried on the shoes. They were great. Got everything. She's like, "Do you want me to box these up?" I'm like, "No, I don't need boxes." I mean, at this point, right? Because I've already checked my luggage, so there's no place for me to put a box. So I just took everything. I took the bag in its dust bag, and I took the shoes in their dust bag. I contemplated what I was putting in my carry-on and what was in my personal. Like, I made sure that I had enough room so that things wouldn't be squished and whatever. So I completed the transaction, and now at this point, I want to say that I think it's now maybe like 2.5 hours before my flight, maybe only 2 hours. I think it was actually 2 hours. Oh, and that was the other thing. Anytime I was going through something, they were like, "What time is your flight?" And I told them, and it was like, "Oh, okay." I think at some point they wouldn't have even let me go. Anyway, so I get done, I have my stuff, and now I take the train back for the 5th time back over to L. And I did go into some of the other stores, there just to see what Hermes had, and they didn't have any bags or whatever. Because I think at that point, I think Deb mentioned that they had something, maybe like a Picatin or wherever she was flying out of, but they didn't. I think I just sat down in a chair. It was just like, I just need to just decompress and whatever. I did go to the lounge at some point, but it was seriously exhausting and really frustrating because I wanted a bag. And if the guy had turned me down when I went back a 4th time and he said, "No, you have to have a K gate boarding pass," I would have I would have abandoned ship and gone back to M or L or whatever. Now I'm getting my letters confused. Yeah, and I wouldn't have had the bag or the shoes, but it all worked out. But man, I worked for that bag. That's what I think I told Deb and Claire, because I think by that time Victoria was already on her flight. And I was like, I worked really, really hard for this bag, so I feel like I deserved it. It was hard fought. But anyway, so that's the story of how I almost didn't get the leather side trunk, the Vibe side trunk that I brought home, and the sneakerinas that I brought home. So very glad, like I said, that I persevered. Both, I think Deb and Claire at one point were like, "Oh my gosh, you are tenacious." They were like, "We would have given up long, long before you did." And I was like, "But I want the bag." So anyway, so that's it. That's my story. I will do one more kind of Paris adjunct related video. I'm going to talk about the VAT refund process because I've had some people ask about that, and also to touch on coming back into the United States and what, if anything, kind of customs things happened. So that will be my last Paris video, so keep your eye out for that. I do have 2 unboxings coming up, and then a 3rd and maybe a 4th. And anyway, yeah, so stick around. Several unboxings, things at some point. I'm sort of following Amelia's lead and having my own little corner of anticipation. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Sorry this was rambling, and hopefully I can edit this down. But thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up. If you want to keep on watching, there'll be another video over here. If you have not subscribed, It would mean the world to me if you would click that subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know every time I upload a video. And wherever you are, I hope you are having an amazing day or evening. And I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.